Joey?
He's doing good, doing good. He's got a full beard now, though.
Really?
Yeah.
Brother Joey Ebanks.
Brother Joey Ebanks. And again, I'm proud of him. He's out there evangelizing, and I just want to make sure and do some announcements for him because he actually had a meeting last night, but I forgot.
Okay.
Anyway, tonight on the 5th of June, Hotland Road in Northside, Cayman Street Evangelism, and again, this is Brother Joey Ebanks. It's around 7:30. Between 7:30 and 8:30, it's Hotland, number 165 Hotland Road on tonight, 5th of June. Again, that's 165 Hotland Road, 7:30 to 8:30. Come and join Mr. Brother Joey Ebanks, who's going to be doing some evangelism out there. And, of course, he's asking everyone as a community to come out if you can. But regardless, make sure and send some prayer.
Absolutely.
Send some prayer out for our brothers and sisters. We see all kinds of things happening in our communities. We wonder where it's going.
Yeah.
And a lot of things to be concerned about. And I know there's another topic, again, that you're probably going to chat about soon. But he's asking, amongst other things, let's make sure and let's keep praying for each other. Let's keep praying for the message. Let's keep getting it out there. And I just want to extend to Joy and let him know that I'm very proud of him, what he's doing. I think that takes a lot of strength, a lot of courage to get out there and really try to preach the word. So, again, it's 165 Hotland Road tonight on 165 Hotland Road between 7:30 and 8:30 p.m.
Indeed. And as we say, it's important, certainly as a good
That's
book
north
says,
side.
that we should be our brother's keeper. And again, that includes praying for them in times of trouble, challenge, or otherwise. If you have nobody in specific to pray for, well, maybe you can pray for the island as we enter in another hurricane season. And as we talked about, a few systems in and around our area, low-pressure systems in particular, none of them real threats of turning into anything, though we might see some rain to start off next week, but obviously maybe I'll try to give you a little update on that tomorrow when we wrap up the show.
We appreciate that.
The good news is we are up streaming, so the show is now being brought to you live on your radio dial, 103.1 FM, but simulcast, finally, on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. You can find us at the keyword Straight Talk Radio Show. We're also on the ACT Cruise Tourism Facebook page as well. It is 59 minutes past the hour of 4 o'clock, and we do have to pause and go off to the usual top-of-the-hour news brought to you by our news partner, the BBC. But when we come back, the phone lines remain open, 745-2626, where we will begin our substantive discussion for today. So keep it locked. There'll be more Straight Talk next on Bobo FM.
Bobo.
How can we understand the world better?
The BBC World Service is a window onto the wider world.
The vantage point from which to survey a new horizon.
News, reports, and analysis from around the world.
Stories we think matter.
Different people from different societies.
We get to the heart of global issues.
News, stories, and global perspectives from the BBC World Service.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM. The BBC is the world's most trusted news source. And Bobo 103.1 is where you'll find the BBC World Service.
BBC News.
The world news from the BBC.
And the home of Cayman's most listened to talk shows.
That's right, folks. Everyone is telling their mama about the cold hard truth.
And welcome to Straight Talk. I'm your host, Austin Harris.
And I'm Ellio Solomon.
Across Cayman, on FM, online, and on your smart speaker. This is Bobo 103.1.
Welcome to our newsroom here in central London. We place ourselves here, a little desk right in the thick of things.
OS from the BBC.
We can catch the very latest news from our colleagues, not just in this enormous room, but also from our colleagues around the world.
I'm in the room where they're treating children.
This is a combat zone.
The situation after the typhoon is very complicated.
It was a very tense situation.
OS from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM. This is Bobo 103.1, powered by Health Services Authority.
At Health Services Authority, they are committed to caring for you. They are Cayman's largest and longest-standing healthcare provider, offering the most comprehensive range of inpatient, outpatient, and public health services at 9 different locations across all 3 islands.
Across Cayman on 103.1 FM, online, and on your smart speaker. The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo 103.1.
Hello, I'm Moira Alderson with the BBC News. Donald Trump and the world's richest man, Elon Musk, are involved in a rapidly escalating row a week after the billionaire businessman left his job as a presidential advisor. Mr. Musk said he would immediately begin decommissioning the Dragon capsules made by his SpaceX company to take astronauts to the International Space Station. Donald Trump had suggested he could withdraw government contracts from Mr. Musk's firms. Gary O'Donoghue is in Washington.
Dragon spacecraft is one of the main rockets that gets astronauts to and from the space station. In many ways, SpaceX is absolutely central to America's place in space, to all that sort of capacity. NASA doesn't really get up and down from space anymore at the moment. And he was going to be central, of course, to the Mars mission and all that kind of thing. And so he has a real ability to hurt the agenda of Donald Trump's administration.
Shares in Elon Musk's electric vehicle firm Tesla have plunged more than 14% in the wake of his row with Donald Trump. The company has lost around $150 billion in value in a matter of hours. Tesla's fall helped to bring down overall share prices on Wall Street. Erin Delmore is in New York.
I remember being on the conference call and the earnings call when Elon Musk said that he'd be stepping back from government. That was something that his board really welcomed, wanting more of his time, wanting him to focus more solely on his business enterprises and endeavors. So to wade back into the political fray at this point, it's weighing down Tesla's stock. It is probably going to weigh down investor confidence too. And it really just comes to the forefront of a bunch of other problems that have really been weighing Tesla down over the course of the last year.
Benjamin Netanyahu has confirmed that Israel has armed a Palestinian militia in Gaza opposed to Hamas. A large clan based in Rafah claims to provide security for aid convoys, but has been accused of looting them. In response to allegations that he was putting weapons into the hands of criminal gangs, Mr. Netanyahu countered he was saving the lives of Israeli soldiers. Meanwhile, Israel has carried out airstrikes on the southern suburbs of the Lebanese capital, Beirut. Israelis said it was targeting underground sites used to produce military drones. Southern Beirut is considered a stronghold of Hezbollah, which is backed by Iran. Hugo Beshega reports from Beirut.
The unusual night attack followed a warning issued by the Israeli military for several buildings. The streets were packed on the eve of Eid al-Adha, one of the most important celebrations in Islam. Israel has carried out frequent airstrikes across Lebanon on targets it says are linked to the group, despite a ceasefire that came into force in November that ended more than a year of conflict. Each side accuses the other of not entirely complying with the deal. Israel says it will continue to act to prevent Hezbollah from rearming.
BBC News. The United States has imposed further sanctions against the International Criminal Court, targeting 4 judges. The Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, said they had engaged in what he called illegitimate and baseless actions targeting America and Israel. In response, the ICC said the measures were a clear attempt to undermine the independence of an international judicial body. The Trump administration had already issued sanctions against the ICC and its chief prosecutor in February. The former Brazilian president, Jair Bolsonaro, has been questioned by police over the role one of his sons has played in a campaign for US sanctions against a Brazilian Supreme Court judge. Eduardo Bolsonaro, a member of Brazil's Congress, has been in the United States since February. Here's Leonardo Rocha.
Eduardo Bolsonaro joined other supporters of the former president who've settled in the US to lobby members of the Trump administration. They say the Supreme Court Judge Alexandre de Moraes must be sanctioned by Washington for the systemic persecution of the opposition. Mr. Moraes ordered X, Rumble and other social media networks to close the accounts of Brazilian journalists and activists accused of spreading fake news. The Brazilian government says Eduardo Bolsonaro is breaking the law in a desperate attempt to undermine his father's trial at the Supreme Court.
A jury in New York is deliberating in the retrial of the Hollywood mogul Harvey Weinstein, who's accused of rape and sexual assault. The co-founder of Miramax Studio is accused of raping an actress and of sexually assaulting 2 other women. A Japanese private space company says it's failed to make contact with its lunar lander. It was the firm's second attempt to be the first non-US firm to land an uncrewed spacecraft on the moon. The Tokyo-based company, iSpace, said it had been unable to establish communication with the craft, named Resilience, after touchdown on Thursday. That's the latest world news from the BBC.
The views and opinions opinions expressed on Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio do not necessarily reflect or represent the views of Stingray Media, its staff, or contributors. Callers to the program accept full responsibility for the views expressed. The show host and affiliates are not liable for any statements made or any harm claimed. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, here's Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio on Bobo 103.1.
And welcome back, K-Man, to more Straight Talk here on your favorite radio dial, Bobo 103.1 FM. We're your host, Ellio Solomon, myself, Austin Harris. And the phone lines are now open at 745-2626 on this otherwise open mic Thursday here on Straight Talk, where you can also add your thoughts, your comments, and or questions to our ongoing discussions. You can also reach out to us on our version of the 1-800 number by calling our WhatsApp line, 928-2562. And from there, you can share either a WhatsApp audio note or a traditional WhatsApp text message. We begin the 5 o'clock hour, 7 minutes past the hour of 5 o'clock to be precise. That is the time in studios. And we begin our discussion on, well, the not so good news of our fellow colleague in the media, journalist Andrel Harris, who has been reported missing here in the Cayman Islands. According to a press release put out by the Royal Cayman Islands Police Service, Andrel Harris was reported missing on Wednesday after not attending work that day. Police said that he was last seen in the area of Pedro Castle Road at approximately 9:30 p.m. on Tuesday. This afternoon, the police also issued a missing person alert on social media, and a meeting was scheduled to take place at 3 p.m. at the Cayman Islands Baptist Church for people who wanted to get involved in the search efforts. But since the news, Ellio, broke of this unfortunate circumstance, there have been no shortage of persons in the community reaching out, asking, obviously, how they can help, and a outpouring of prayers and thoughts with his family and obviously immediate connections, praying for a safe return of Mr. Harris to his home. Don't quite know what the circumstances are. Obviously, there's a lot of speculation in the community, and something that, we hope the worst has not occurred. We pray the worst has not occurred. He is a fellow brother in arms, as the case may be, from those of us who work in media and in journalism, someone that, we both know very well and respect for the quality of work that he has done and for the length of time that he has done it. And we're praying that he will be found and safely returned to his family. The police have requested that anyone who may have seen Mr. Andrel Harris or knows of his whereabouts are urged to call 911 or the Boddentown Police Station at 947-2220. Today, police added 2 more telephone numbers for people where they could call, again, I assume, to manage, the traffic, because a lot of phone calls must be ringing. But the 2 additional numbers you can call if you can't get through at 947-2220. You can call 945-4624 or 949-6555. Those numbers, again, I'll give you all 3. 947-2220 or 945-4624 or 949-6555. Police said Mr. Harris was last seen wearing a dark blue shirt with rolled up sleeves and black pants. He's approximately 5 feet 9 inches tall, of slim build, with dark brown complexion, and has long, neatly kept dreadlocks, the press release stated. Again, very concerning about these happenings. But also I was, rather impressed how quickly a missing persons report was issued. I know he hadn't shown up for work on Thursday, and a whole day went by, but I think that very same day, his employers, Compass Media, filed a missing persons report. Normally, even the police would tell you, he's not missing unless he's been gone 48 hours or more in some cases. Obviously, we're glad to know that they acted quickly enough. But obviously, there is speculation as to what prompted the escalation from not showing up to work to being formally declared missing.
Yeah.
But whatever the circumstances
might be a little additional information we're not aware of.
I suspect that is the case, and certainly don't want to speculate at this very sensitive time, other than to encourage members of the Cayman community. We are our brother's keeper. We are a small community. It is regrettable how, unfortunately, often persons do go missing on this small island, but it happens. But this is an opportunity for us to be on the lookout for one of our own, and encouraging members of the public. If you see something, say something. If you want to get involved in the search efforts, obviously you can reach out to the police on a variety of numbers. As I said earlier, there was, in fact, a search and rescue mission that took place this afternoon. We don't have any further updates to give you at this time. I wish I could be saying some better news that he had been found, located, and was discovered to be safe, but we just don't know that at this time.
Well, that's all we can say right now is that we pray. We pray for him. We pray for the family, but we're praying that he'll be found and be found alive and well.
Yes, indeed.
We don't know exactly what the circumstances is, but that's all we can do. And maybe, I don't know if there's any way, again, you've talked about numbers. I imagine we can all keep our eyes open and see what happens. But it is very sad, and of course, hearing about that, it reminds me, wasn't there some girl several years ago that somewhere around Pedro area, whatever, totally disappeared and nobody ever found her?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I shudder to think of, the implications of going missing in the area of Pedro Castle. But, yes, there have been reports of persons going missing in that area. There have been persons, reports of persons going missing in East End. And I think the common ground that is unique to both locations is they represent cliffsides close to arguably deep water. So we are hopeful. We remain positive and certainly remain prayerfully faithful that this story will end with good news and not bad news. But we encourage members within the sound of our voice to, at some point in time, lift up a quiet prayer to the Almighty, asking him for a safe return of Mr. Harris to his family and loved ones, and that this story can end a bit brighter than it has begun. But certainly an outpouring of love, concern, and prayer have already been expressed. Just one more time for the benefit of the search and rescue operations and information purposes. If you know something, if you've seen Mr. Andrell Harris past any time from Tuesday, the last time he was seen was Tuesday at 9:30 p.m. at Pedro Castle Road. But if you've seen him at any other time over the course of the last few days, you're urged to contact the Bordentown Police Station on 947-2220, or you can dial 945-4624 or 949-6555 is the number. So praying for God's mercies and to ask him to watch over our friend and colleague in the media.
Amen.
Amen, indeed. Not sticking to, but moving on to, I think, another interesting and arguably perhaps uncomfortable subject for some folks, depending on what side of the court case you may find yourself. But in today's media, and the headlines also from Compass Media, or the Cayman Compass in particular, we see the headline, CUC argues in court against the release of cost and renewable energy studies. It's always troubling when you see the monopoly utility provider seeking to deny access to information.
Well, anyone
service that they provide, but anyone for that matter. But CUC is one of those companies that, well, who you going to call if you want your lights to turn on? You only got one person.
Well, I'll just throw out what it reminds me the moment I hear it is of Operation Tempura. You'll remember that one, I think.
Yes.
I think the last bill that I saw was somewhere around the taxpayers paying about $14 million for Operation Tempura, and then people accusing the police of being down here sunbathing, etc. And then when it came to the release of the information, the governor's office didn't want to release the information a significant long period of time. And I think one of the lines quoted somewhat as to why it shouldn't be released is that this information might prejudice the relationship between the mother country and the Cayman Islands. So what could you have done that could possibly prejudice that relationship?
Indeed.
So, yeah, it's always a little bit concerning to your point when certain information, I don't want to get access to this.
Yeah, indeed.
And in this particular case, CUC providing electricity.
Well, let me just share some excerpts from the article itself. We have to be, as always, cautious. The matter is currently before the courts, so the rules of sub judice takes effect, and those of us in the media in particular have to be rather careful of what we speculate or we offer up for comments on such matters. But as it is a company that impacts all of us, if you pay a light bill or have a light bulb in your house, it's arguably connected to a light bill from the Caribbean Utilities Company. Mm-hmm. But CUC is battling in court to prevent the release of 2 studies that give information about its costs as well as its capacities of Grand Cayman's power grid to add renewable energy. The Ombudsman's Office early last year ordered that OFREG, the utility regulator, to release the documents following what was defined as a protracted Freedom of Information dispute. OFREG had agreed to release a small portion of a 2014 CUC cost of service study, which the power company had supplied to the regulator to justify a proposed increase in base electricity rates, but then had refused to provide the second part of that study, which involved the incremental distributed solar study 2023. The regulator at the time cited commercial interest in an upcoming request for proposals bidding process for the generation of renewable energy as the reason why the studies should not be disclosed. However, in its decision on the matter last year, the Ombudsman's Office had found that OFREG had failed to adequately demonstrate the connection between the records and the bidding process or the potential harm to CUC's commercial interests if the studies were released. Now, this is a certain area that, again, we should also be very familiar with. Whenever there are companies perhaps painted arguably in a corner or being asked to provide information about their company's performance and or strategy, they oftentimes throw up it is commercially sensitive information, and to release it would harm ongoing negotiations. Government likes to use it whenever they're involved in the project that may be, at the very least, at face value questionable, and they don't necessarily want to talk about it in the public domain. They also throw up this red flag of commercially sensitive information. But certainly you can appreciate, Ellio, the implications of the study itself. And, heaven forbid, the study produces information that suggests the rates being charged by CUC are somehow unfair and imbalanced, or more importantly, the move towards renewable energy have in some way
been thwarted,
restricted, denied, or otherwise impeded.
I'm thinking quite a few synonyms.
Where I was going with that, by the local utilities company. I will state for the record, we don't know that any of these things have in fact occurred, but certainly you are free to speculate. And certainly that is what is the talk on the street anyway, that whenever CUC seeks to increase rates, but they have a report that would otherwise justify those rate increases, but yet that report is denied from the public view, then it raises immediate warning flags for members of the public.
Again, I'd like to remind the public that Mr. Kerry Lawrence, came here on the program, and amongst other things, one of the issues he discussed was CUC.
Yes.
And some of the challenges that he had as a Caymanian in terms of trying to get his business going. And he also amazingly highlighted the fact that we missed as a government, as a country, the opportunity, that 5-year window of opportunity by which to trigger a negotiation or renegotiation of the CUC contract. And again, just to make sure and spell that out, if we as a government had signed a 20 or 25-year contract, for example, with CUC based on all the other present situations, such as when they could increase, how much they could increase, et cetera, all those rules guided by that particular contract, then it meant that if it was 25 years, as an example, then at year 20 was that opportunity where the government would have to say, hey, we want to renegotiate this, or there's a couple of things we want to amend it. Let's sit down and chat about this.
Yes.
If it was 20 years, then at year 15, that would have occurred. But it did not. And we have to ask ourselves why that did not happen. And I would have thought that off-reg would be one of the triggers to say, this is up for negotiation.
True.
I mean, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
I would think so.
Well, certainly the average citizen is not paying close attention to the CUC contract or the details contained therein. So to your point.
Yeah, I doubt the average guy is at home saying, I'll go back in my files and look at the CUC's contract. No, so I think I'm guessing amongst other persons. I mean, that particular body, I would imagine, would be if not the trigger to say, let me remind the government of where we're at in terms of this window. And I'm just saying, I stand to be corrected, would love to be corrected if I'm wrong. Please feel free. Call the program, send a text. But I would have expected that. And if that is indeed the case, did it happen? And if it didn't happen, why is that?
Right.
And that definitely needs to be looked into because we definitely missed an opportunity there.
Well, to your point, I'm glad you raised it. And again, you reminded us where we learned this from our guest several weeks, if not months ago, from our guest, Mr. Kerry Lawrence, where we're speaking specifically to solar. And he raised the awareness that these are, in fact, the terms contained in the contract, which is a 25-year contract, usually between CUC and the government of the Cayman Islands, which, as Ellio alluded to, should the government wish to renegotiate the terms and conditions of that contract, they're obligated to do so by giving notice of at least 5 years before that contract expires. Now, it's interesting when we use the figure or the timeline of 5 years, because in this issue, which again involves the cost of service study being released in the public domain, a battle that's going on between the ombudsman and the regulator, also contained in that CUC contract, specifically under, I believe, and I also stand to be corrected, under the transmission and distribution section of their contract, CUC is also obligated to conduct a cost of service study every 5 years as well. Now, I can't say whether they have done so with any consistency. The contract does not obligate that survey to be released in the public domain, but surely it has to be completed and submitted to the regulator, OFREG. So maybe a future phone call to OFREG, maybe when they're not in court, could answer that question in terms of, has that cost of service study been regularly transmitted or shared with the utility provider as is in accordance with their contract? I think that would be an interesting question to answer. But also, when we look at the second part of the study that has also been denied, the incremental distributed solar study, I think this speaks to the issues that Mr. Lawrence was also pointing to. On the one hand, he was concerned that new entrants in the solar or renewable energy market in the Cayman Islands were being hampered because CUC has to vet or has a decision-making role to play as it relates to other companies entering the market. And of course, the obvious question there is, well, how can you possibly allow someone or some entity who's obviously going to be competing with this newcomer to the market to have some sort of decision-making control as to whether or not that new party, that new group can in fact enter the market and to what extent that they provide renewable energy. But on the other side, I think this study sits at the core, pardon the pun, of the energy sharing and profit sharing agreement as it relates to persons who, let's just take rooftop solar. We've said it before, there are restrictions based on the current core program that doesn't allow a homeowner to really maximize the full benefit of saying, putting their entire house on solar. They can, come completely off the grid, but they're still going to have an excess, and that excess was thought to be sold to CUC and then, of course, repaid in the form of credits. So whether you have a bill, then you can certainly offset your bill by the renewable energy that you produce from your own solar power. This study has also sought to address that, presumably, in terms of how much capacity can CUC add to the grid. They've said to us, or said in the public domain, that, despite popular opinion, that rooftop solar could in fact be the answer to Cayman's electricity cost concerns. CUC has insisted that that's not necessarily the case, and there are limitations in which the grid in specific can handle new energy being added to it. Again, it is possible that this study may either confirm or deny those statements coming from CUC, and maybe, just maybe, all we can do is speculate, might be some of the commercially sensitive information that CUC speaks of that it doesn't want necessarily in the public domain. I will just say that we don't know this for a fact. This is just mere speculation. We're thinking as to, what could be the implications, what could possibly be the reasons why these clearly necessary studies and the information contained therein would be denied to the public. But that is where we are, and these are the cases that are making their way through the court system as we speak. Yeah. I think it would be a good opportunity for us, maybe after this case is concluded, to perhaps, have a discussion in some, comprehensive way on this subject.
Absolutely, and I was thinking try to again to first and foremost reach out to CUC and see if they're happy to come here on the program and explain a few things. In the absence of that, then clearly we'll have to go audit ourselves.
Correct.
But I've heard all sorts of things, such as, one of the issues being batteries, for example, in terms of the storage. You hear a lot of things behind it, and it's a bit murky. But whenever we come back from this break, because I think you're signaling me that we're going to go to a break, right?
45 seconds.
45 seconds. I think it's a good question to ask ourselves, right? If we miss this contract opportunity, what are the avenues that are available to the public in terms of being able to express their grievances? That's one of the things I'd like to discuss when we come back from the break.
All right. Well, the phone lines are open, 745-2626. If you've got an interest in this topic, or, of course, the issues surrounding the topic of your electricity bill and how much closer we may get to enhancing renewable energies into our energy solutions in the Cayman Islands, the phone lines are yours to utilize as you wish. But at 28 minutes past the hour of 5 o'clock, we're going to pause, take a short commercial break, but there'll be more Straight Talk next.
More Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio coming up. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Bobo 103.1. Across Cayman on FM, online, and on your smart speaker. This is Bobo 103.1. Powered by Health Services Authority. Committed to caring for you. The views and opinions expressed on Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio do not necessarily reflect or represent the views of Stingray Media, its staff, or contributors. Callers to the program accept full responsibility for the views expressed. The show host and affiliates are not liable for any statements made or any harm claimed. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, here's Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio on Bobo 103.1.
And welcome back, man, to more Straight Talk here on Bobo 103.1 FM and simulcast live over social media on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. We're your hosts, Ellio Solomon and myself, Austin Harris. I told you it was going to be a short break.
Short.
Kind of a slow commercial ad month for us going on here in studios, but that's all right. The less commercials, the more talk time. And we're thrilled about that. But also it gives me the opportunity to encourage members of the business community. Certainly, if you are looking for advertising solutions to promote your business and perhaps increase sales, I would encourage you to consider Straight Talk as your advertising partner. You can email us at host@straighttalk.ky for more information. Or, of course, you can also reach out to us via WhatsApp, 928-2562, and we'll be happy to provide you with some opportunities that perhaps might enhance your business, bring awareness to your products and services, and hopefully help move those needles upwards so that you can continue to stay in business, invest in business, whether that be in increasing your inventory or potentially hiring even more Caymanians to participate in your success. If advertising is your concern and need, we ask that you keep Straight Talk here on Bobo 103.1 at the top of your mind. Ellio, we were talking prior to the break about a case that is making its way through the legal system that involves the local utility company, Caribbean Utilities Company, seeking to restrict a rather important study relating to their 2014 cost of service study, but also a 2023 incremental distributed solar study that also deals with, on the one hand, the amount of renewable energy that the grid itself can sustain, and obviously that impacts both CUC customers as well as new entrants onto the market. And then on the other hand, the cost of service study examines whether or not the rates being applied to consumers are in fact in line with their costs, or if perhaps they might be excessive, as certainly many people will often argue once a month when they get their CUC bill. But was there anything you wanted to add on that point?
No, I just wanted to highlight this as an opportunity to say, if you're looking at the issues that face us, such as CUC, and in terms of what we're now hearing that's going on in the courts, and arguably somebody calling for something to not be released, and what we would probably put under the umbrella of lack of transparency, what are the sort of recourses for the public? How do the public deal with that? And I'd like to take this opportunity to highlight that I think one of the things that we can improve here in Cayman, the pluses and the deltas, right?
Yes.
The delta side, I think one of the things that we can improve in Cayman is our responsiveness to some of these things. Again, we see on the gossiping side, lots of text and post, but on the intellectual side, we don't see that. There was Mark Twain, which I understand is not his real name, but he had a saying. Mm-hmm. And the saying was that the world is shaped by the unreasonable man. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a lot of intellectual people out there, but we also need to make our voices heard. So if I go back, for example, as I talk about this, on the whole issue of off-reg, to the best of my knowledge now, that actually came out of IT strategy number 12, to which I was a part of, with persons like Mr. David Archbold, who used to be head of computer services at one point. You also had Mr. What was my good friend name again? He's missing me again.
From where?
Jim Knapp. That's the name I wanted. Mr. Jim Knapp. You had also persons like Nick Robson, all these persons, and many more, and I apologize, I missed their names, but all part of IT strategy number 12. And out of that came the ICTA, which was the Information Communication Technology Authority, which, to the best of my knowledge, evolved to now become off-reg. And I remember in terms of the legislation, and I know one of the persons involved in drafting that piece of legislation was also the lawyer there. What's his name again? My goodness.
You with names today, buddy?
I'm not great with names.
I know, neither am I.
No, I'm not great. I don't know how I ever got into politics. But that's I'm out. Sorry, I didn't remember your name.
Confession.
But the bottom line of it is that you had the off-reg there, and I know part of that legislation was the fact that you had a grievance section, right? So you can go in and give a grievance. But the point I'm making is we need to, as a society, particularly those persons that I would like to believe are on the intellectual side, we know what the problems are, mm-hmm. and we want to discuss them, but we don't really do anything. So let me harp on about this statement as I put all this together.
Sure.
from Mark Twain. Why is he saying that the world is shaped by the unreasonable man? Because to me, there are a lot of people sitting and they're very bright, they're very intelligent, but we sue amongst ourselves. We are not the ones who pick up the phone and call the talk show. Yeah. We are not the ones who are texting. Where you are getting a lot of, not to mix everyone up, But where you are getting the majority of texts and calls are not necessarily from all of the persons who are, we would deem to be the intellectuals. You know, and you only have to look at the places where you get a lot of gossip. Well, look at all the replies. It shows you what's out there. Where the intellectual tends to sit and listen, assimilate the information, blah, blah, blah. But at the same time, you're allowing then the unreasonable people to shape the world. Because really, at the end of the day, it's
the vocal minority.
It's what you're hearing.
Yes.
I'll give you an example from a political perspective. You and I are sitting here in the studio doing a reasonably decent job, and there's an intellectual sitting or a group of intellectuals sitting. Those guys are all right, you know. I like the little banter, and then the intellectual conversation is pretty good. But what happens? You only get one unreasonable person that calls in, saying you need to keep your mouth shut.
Right.
And the reason why he or she is calling is because they probably bummed you for $10 and you didn't give it to them. And now the intellectual ears pricks up, you know, and he says, what's that? Somebody doesn't like Austin. And you only take 2 or 3 unreasonable persons calling in the same manner.
Right.
And all of a sudden now, you know, the intellectual has went 20 feet away from his radio, to use that example. Where on the other side, we need just the opposite. The intellectual person needs to be able to respond. I remember, for example, giving an example I know very well, when I was pushing to bring the pension amendment that would allow Caymanians to be able to buy a piece of land, build a house, buy a house, and pay off your mortgage. I was pushing for that for 2 years. And honestly, Austin, I think you would know, because I think you were on the show. I don't remember ever once anyone calling and saying, yeah, Ellio, we support you on that. Nothing. You got nothing from it.
Right.
And why am I saying that? It was eventually passed. Right. But I'm saying that because had persons called, the individuals who are in power are listening.
Right.
This is your constant referendum, if you like. They are listening. Even if they don't want to come on, they're listening. If they're not listening, a proxy is listening. Somebody's listening on their behalf.
Indeed.
And if they can hear your voice and hear what you are saying, it gives them the temperature in the room and helps to give, you know, how can I put it, vertebrate them, give them the intestinal fortitude to move forward and do something. So I just want to use this CUC as an example that even though there are specific provisions in the legislation, as I recall it, that allows you to lodge grievances, utilizing the talk show, and again, you can do it in full anonymity by sending it to 925-25, what is it, 924 or 925? Your number, what's it again?
928-25.
928-2562. So, you know, it's things like that. Again, it can remain anonymous, but it can be read, and those persons who are in power, who you have elected, and you get to hire and fire every 4 years, gets to hear your voice. And I just want to encourage everyone, but particularly those who I know are ever bright and very intelligent, to not just sit there and assimilate and sue amongst yourself, but actually let your voices be heard, even if it has to be done so in an anonymous format.
Well, I thank you for saying that again and for reiterating a point that we've made several times on this program in terms of some of our own personal ambitions for a development of a think tank. Certainly it has been stated many times that Ellio and I believe that we need, more think tanks. It doesn't have to just be one. It could be a grouping of them. And encouraging persons within the sound of our voice, just reach out to people.
And you can start right here with this.
Yes, but absolutely, as it relates to, for our purposes, we would very much continue to like to establish a think tank that takes on issues of national importance or certainly national relevance and be able to discuss them, first of all, in a sort of closed session meeting to sort of, gain some insight from the minds of other Caymanians or residents of this country, but then to help us to present those reasoned thought as part of daily content on our program, because we, continually remind you as to what it is our individual goals are for this program. We remind you what sets us apart, what makes us different, straight talk from others, perhaps who are operating within a similar space. And our goal is, as it always has been, to educate, enlighten, and elevate the listening audience in everything that we talk about. We want you to leave every time you tune into the program having learned something that maybe you didn't know or perhaps knew about but hadn't had it explained to the level that perhaps we sometimes take our conversations. I know we've had persons like regular callers to our program. I'm sure you wouldn't mind me calling his name. Mr. Mario Ebanks, for example, being the first to answer our clarion call to formulate a think tank sort of arrangement of intellectual-minded persons. And I just want to echo those sentiments and send out again another call to action, if you will. If you are interested in being a part of a roundtable discussion of this nature to discuss things of national importance or relevance, please reach out to us, as my colleague had said. You can use our WhatsApp number, 928-2562, to do it, or you can email us at host@straighttalk.ky.
Yeah, and I just stress, I mean, we've had quite a few people calling the program, and again, I want to encourage them to continue to do so and thank them all for all of their, wonderful and intellectual input. We greatly appreciate it, and that includes those persons that sends the text. But it's just a good way for us to have, as intellectuals, to be able to have an influence on our society as well by being able to share our thoughts and ideas. It doesn't mean that we're always going to agree, but that sort of back and forth is only good as we rub away on the issues. But just let's get that discussion started however we have to start it, so that we can make sure that we're influencing where our country is going, and not necessarily having society being shaped by the unreasonable man.
Absolutely. And just to answer the second part of, again, I think your aside in terms of Mark Twain's real name, a cursory Google search confirms that Mark Twain obviously is the pen name of a Mr. Samuel Langhorne Clemens.
No, we can see
birth
why.
name. Born November 30th, 1835, and died April 21st, 1910. But yeah, Samuel Langhorne doesn't have the same ring as Mark Twain does.
Yeah, I knew that Mark Twain wasn't a real one, but yeah, thanks for that. I greatly appreciate that. A bit of edification. You educated, enlightened, and elevated me, Mr. Harris. Well done.
I used to be with the government. That's what I'm here for. I'm here to help.
We're here to help.
We're here to help. Yeah. So from one ombudsman issue, which again, the ombudsman is in fact in court now with CUC and OFREG, trying to get at least 2 studies released in the public domain. Those studies relate to the 2014 CUC cost of service study, which the power company provided to the regulator, but did not provide the second part of the study, which is the incremental distributed solar study 2023. The ombudsman is encouraging OFREG to release not one, but both studies in the public domain, because she believes, or they believe, that it is in fact in the public interest. And I would have to say, I agree with her. That matter is working its way through the courts, and certainly once it is completed, we will make an effort to contact both the utility provider as well as perhaps others involved in the renewable energy space to further examine these issues. But as we stated earlier on, according to the CUC contract, we can certainly, government, when I say we, can certainly question or seek to amend the terms of that contract, given that they provide notice, as much as 5 years in advance notice, in order to have those discussions, but also contained in that CUC contract as it relates to their transmission and distribution obligations, they are also obligated to produce a cost of service study every 5 years, and they're obligated to make this study available to the regulator. I can't say whether or not that happens with any regularity, pardon the pun, or the use of words, but certainly in the public domain, these documents have not been released, and I too think that is a shame. But certainly this is something for the parliamentarians to deal with, perhaps something that, again, for documents to be made public, they would have to be laid on the table in Parliament first. Maybe you can encourage your representatives and MPs to pursue these matters, because you are obviously at the end of the day the end user, and certainly the one who's paying for these services.
That's it.
Sticking with the Ombudsman's office, just as a matter of continuity, the Cayman Public Service Watchdog has launched an own investigation into the police services detention center on Fairbanks Road amid fears over safety and drug abuse. In an article that appeared in the media several weeks ago. The move came after a string of public complaints about the well-being of inmates at the holding facility, officially called the Cayman Islands Detention Center, located off Fairbanks Road. Ombudsman Ms. Sharon Rolston said, given the seriousness of some of the incidents, including some where prisoners have been injured or consumed dangerous quantities of drugs while in police custody, we feel compelled to review the issue at a broader level with the objective of improving safety for both prisoners and police officers. The detention center, which is operated by the Royal Cayman Islands Police Service, is used to detain those arrested by the police or other agencies. The ombudsman said her office had investigated concerns from the public about the detention center located next to the women's prison on Fairbanks Road in Georgetown and had been given preliminary information about other complaints. But she said she considered further investigation was needed after she reviewed the details of the complaints made. Ms. Rolston, again quoted in the media article, said, given the number of incidents at the Cayman Islands Detention Center in a relatively short period of time, along with the fact the Cayman Islands Detention Center manages individuals who can be among either the most dangerous or the most vulnerable in society, I believe there is significant public interest in reviewing these issues more thoroughly. So it's a question, obviously, about how prisoners are treated, and regardless of what your thoughts are in terms of whether you're talking about violent gang-related crimes or persons perhaps, taken to the detention center for simple matters, we say simple matters, such as DUI, and they got to sleep it off. They're all housed in the same place, and constitutionally and obviously morally, we're obligated to ensure that those persons, regardless of what crimes they may have committed, are in fact treated humanely and fairly, and certainly the protection of their life, the preservation of their life is something that, our officials and in particular our law enforcement authorities take seriously. This, again, like the CUC matter, are issues that we assume somebody is providing a watchdog services over, but in many cases they're not, and what we assume requires some testing, and this is where the ombudsman steps in now. They're going to say, you know what, we've heard about these complaints. Complaints have been made to our office. We've read about and talked about complaints that have been in the public domain for years, with no real conclusion from those quote-unquote, gossiping remarks, that now we need to formalize some sort of study, and this is what the Ombudsman Office is also presently working on. The Ombudsman said that the findings of this report and the final report on the investigation will be presented to Parliament for its consideration, and certainly at that point in time, Parliament will have the option as to whether or not to lay the report on the table, and in so doing, by that action, would make that report and its contents available to the public for their purview. Now, I think about this issue, and I'm reminded, Ellio, we talk about, going back into our past, and in particular, past roles where we served on similar talk shows like this. I'm reminded of 2014, of a case that the Human Rights Commission at the time were, in fact, reporting on what they believed to be the victimization of 3 teenage girls at the Fairbanks Women's Prison. It was alleged, I believe, from memory, that these 3 teenage girls were, in fact, abused by male prison officers at the facility. And then to make matters worse, whilst one of the 3 may have reported it to their family members or otherwise, the abuse got worse, almost threatening in the nature, for raising the alarm. And that, of course, got the Human Rights Commission involved in that exercise.
What specifically triggered, do you know, the Human Rights Commission to get involved?
Well, again,
like in other words, I mean, is it a case that this is simply a matter of an observation that they made and did a trigger that activated themselves, or was there some kind of a formal application to get them triggered?
Well,
I'm curious.
I believe at the time the incident involved a strip search that these 3 teenage offenders were subjected to, and the commission may have noted what, in their opinion, represented the irregularities of this practice in the prison system as a whole, warranted perhaps the need for a review, as well as perhaps to also look into the procedures relevant to cell searches. As we know also, again, it is commonplace within the prison service, particularly where drugs or restricted material may be in the possession of prisoners. You can't have certain things in prison, obviously, but they do. And oftentimes these things are hidden in cells. So they have sort of, searches that are conducted. I don't know what the shorthand for these searches are called. But the Human Rights Commission, obviously starting from the standpoint of examining the procedural code as it relates to strip searches, also extended their report at the time to include, contraband searches or cell searches as well. I saw from a quick cursory Google search that the commission officials noted it took more than 2 years until November 19th, 2013, for them to receive a copy of the final prison strip search policy, following a request that started as early as 2011. I couldn't find anywhere, and again, this may just be me, but I couldn't find anywhere where there was, in fact, a completed report conducted by the Human Rights Commission on this issue. But I do know that it was an issue relevant to the same one that the Ombudsman's office is now engaging in their own investigation, talking about the treatment of prisoners, albeit in this instance at the at the Cayman Islands Detention Center, which is also located in the same basic footprint or area.
Well, I'm just looking up here on this whole issue because I think it's important on the triggering of this. And it says that in the Cayman Islands, the Human Rights Commission, HRC, is an independent body established under Section 116 of the Cayman Islands Constitution, Order 2009. Its role is to promote, protect, and monitor the observance of human rights in the Cayman Islands. And here's how the commission can be triggered. And again, the most common way that the HRC is triggered is through public complaints. An individual who believes their human rights under the Bill of Rights, Freedoms, and Responsibilities, in quote, in the Constitution, has been breached by a public authority can submit a complaint to the commission. Now, interesting, of course, is who can complain? Anyone in the Cayman Islands, including non-citizens, against whom complaints must be about the actions or decisions of public authorities and not private individuals or companies. And again, that is, I think they kind of refer to that as a sort of a vertical right in terms of saying that you deal with the government, or government to the individual, and not necessarily horizontal with other institutions or persons. But I also note that it says that the HRC reviews new or existing legislation and policies to ensure compatibility with the Constitutional Bill of Rights. If a bill or policy appears to infringe upon rights, example, right to privacy, equality, or family life, the HRC may issue a public statement or recommend changes to lawmakers. So first of all, again, I will say to the public, reiterate the point that I made earlier on. It is very important that we become a society that, reasonably so, but is not backwards with coming forward and lodging our complaints if it is something that needs to be complained about, so that we can trigger the right things. And we do so not to just be adjutants, but to be able to help make the country a little bit of a better place. Now, when it talks about, I was particularly interested because when you talk about legislative review and policies, I think that there are arguably even things happening, as I've complained about in the financial services, in terms of what they're even asking for, that I think to some extent has to be possibly infringing even on people's rights to privacy, etc. And I'm going to look a little bit closer at that because maybe I might have to pen a letter myself you know, it's going to be better than sitting outside the government building on a hunger strike, I can assure you. But I'll definitely see if I can look at that a little bit further.
Absolutely. Just sticking with a review of the prison service, also in 2013, another government department, or if you want to call it an independent body, the National Drug Council, back in 2013, and in particular, if I can just pull it up here, September the 12th, 2013, published a report entitled Her Majesty's Cayman Islands Prison Service Survey Report 2013, which examined policies relevant to cases of alleged abuse amongst prison inmates at the Her Majesty's Prison at that time, His Majesty's Prison Northward, Fairbanks, and Eagle House, which of course was the young offenders detention facility at the time, still is. It looked at the cases of alleged abuse, physical and sexual, as well as a broad picture look at the consumption pattern of legal and illegal drugs within inmates of these facilities. Amongst its conclusions, it identified, again, this is going back to 2013, 16.1% of inmates reported being physically abused. A further 12% made similar allegations in 2011. A further 5.4% reported being sexually abused.
How many?
5.4 in 2013. That representing, of course, a small decrease of 5.7% in 2011 who made similar allegations of sexual abuse. The prevalence of tobacco use obviously stood at the top of the table. 79, call it 80% of inmates in 2013 used tobacco-based products, but also in terms of illegal drugs, 38.3% said they had access to drugs whilst incarcerated. And, of course, those are significant numbers. I think they looked at drugs which included marijuana, but as well as perhaps other harder drugs, all being available within the prison service. So I think there have been reports on these in the past. I know the National Drug Council report in 2013 was in fact published, and that is available for public review. I can't say the same about the Human Rights Commission, but both lean on subjects that the Ombudsman's Office is now presently conducting their own investigation, looking to the alleged practices of abuse, and we think that's a good thing, and we encourage the public to keep an eye on this. We certainly will, and we'll share those details as and when these reports are concluded. But it is 59 minutes now past the hour of 5 o'clock, and once again, we have to pause and take a short commercial break, check in with the top of the hour news brought to you by the BBC, but there'll be more Straight Talk next on Bobo F.
Bobo.
BBC News.
BBC News.
World news from the BBC. Violent clashes.
Thick black smoke.
A tremendous legal victory.
Crucial elections.
Destructive wind.
A search and recovery operation.
A race against time.
An imminent threat.
Flying a drone over a rival team's training session.
Whatever is happening, wherever it's happening, catch up with the latest news bulletins from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM.
The BBC's From Our Own Correspondent.
In today's Russia, no one is allowed anywhere near the political stage if they pose a serious challenge to Vladimir Putin.
Stories and reflections from our reporters around the world.
There is a major sense of insecurity here. More people are coming in from Sudan every day.
From Our Own Correspondent from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM.
How can we understand the world better?
The BBC World Service is a window onto the wider world.
The vantage point from which to survey a new horizon.
News, reports, and analysis from around the world.
Stories we think matter.
Different people from different societies.
We get to the heart of global issues.
News, stories, and global perspectives from the BBC World Service.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM. This is Bobo 103.1, powered by Health Services Authority.
At Health Services Authority, they are committed to caring for you. They are Cayman's largest and longest standing healthcare provider, offering the most comprehensive range of inpatient, outpatient, and public health services at 9 different locations across all 3 islands.
Across Cayman on 103.1 FM, online, and on your smart speaker.
The home of the BBC World Service.
This is Bobo 103.1.
Hello, I'm Moira Alderson with the BBC News. Donald Trump and the world's richest man, Elon Musk, are involved in a rapidly escalating row a week after the billionaire businessman left his job as a presidential advisor. Mr. Musk accused his former boss of ingratitude, saying Mr. Trump would not have won last year's presidential election without his support. He said he would immediately begin decommissioning the Dragon capsules made by his SpaceX company to take astronauts to the International Space Station. Our North America editor Sarah Smith says Mr. Musk could inflict considerable political damage on the Trump administration.
He had promised $100 million to be spent on political groups that are controlled by Donald Trump. Will that money now turn up? That seems quite unlikely. He might be more likely to target that at representatives and senators who, say, for instance, vote for this great big spending bill. He could then use his cash to target them to try and get them replaced by other candidates. That's something that representatives do genuinely worry about, and Elon Musk has a big enough checkbook to make that a real threat.
Shares in Elon Musk's electric vehicle firm Tesla have plunged more than 14% in the wake of his row with Donald Trump. The company has lost around $150 billion in value in a matter of hours. Israel has carried out airstrikes on the southern suburbs of the Lebanese capital Beirut. Israelis said it was targeting underground sites used to produce military drones. Southern Beirut is considered a stronghold of Hezbollah, which is backed by Iran. More from Hugo Beshega in Beirut.
We've seen footage that appeared to show secondary explosions, so this is a suggestion that ammunition was being stored in at least one of the locations hit. What the Israeli military didn't explain was why this attack had to happen at night, and especially tonight, which is the eve of Eid al-Adha, which is one of the most important celebrations in Islam. This is the beginning of a 4-day holiday here in Lebanon. The streets were packed with people, so there was a lot of chaos and confusion after those evacuation warnings were issued as people tried to leave those areas in the south of the city.
Meanwhile, Benjamin Netanyahu has confirmed that Israel has armed a Palestinian militia in Gaza opposed to Hamas. A large clan based in Rafah claims to provide security aid for convoys, but has been accused of looting them. Sebastian Usher is in Jerusalem.
It's certainly going to cause Mr. Netanyahu quite a lot of political damage. I mean, he's been attacked from both the left and the right, saying that he is endangering Israel's security with this kind of action. But he has come out saying, what's wrong with it? It's only good. It only saves the lives of IDF soldiers. So he's essentially defending it. I mean, the rationale behind it, the way that it's presented in the Israeli media, is that this is to be a counterweight to Hamas.
World News from the BBC. The United States has imposed further sanctions against the International Criminal Court, targeting 4 judges. The Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, said they had engaged in what he called illegitimate and baseless actions targeting America and Israel. In response, the ICC said the measures were a clear attempt to undermine the independence of an international judicial body. The Trump administration had already issued sanctions against the ICC and its chief prosecutor in February. The German Chancellor Friedrich Merz has urged President Trump to put more pressure on Russia to end the war with Ukraine. The two men held a news conference at the White House where Mr. Trump suggested he didn't think Russia and Ukraine would sign a peace deal. Sumi Somaskanda is in Washington.
Donald Trump said that he, in his phone call with Vladimir Putin, had said that right now it looks like Ukraine and Russia are like 2 children who are fighting each other and can't be pulled apart, and you have to let them fight. Now, that's not a characterization that necessarily the German Chancellor would agree with. He didn't disagree with Donald Trump openly, but he did say clearly that Russia has been the aggressor here. And if you look at what's happening on the battlefield, it is Ukraine striking Russian military targets, Ukraine striking infrastructure, not civilians, as Russia has been doing.
A Japanese private space company says it's failed to make contact with its lunar lander. It was the company's second attempt to be the first non-US firm to land an uncrewed spacecraft on the moon. The Tokyo-based company, iSpace, said it had been unable to establish communication with the craft, named Resilience, after touchdown on Thursday. Jordanian football fans have been celebrating their national team's success in qualifying for the first time for the World Cup. There were traffic jams in the capital Amman, and elsewhere flag-waving supporters converged on city centres. Jordan went through after beating Oman 3-0. Uzbekistan also qualified for the first time. BBC News.
The views and opinions expressed on Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio do not necessarily reflect or represent the views of Stingray Media, its staff, or contributors. Callers to the program accept full responsibility for the views expressed. The show host and affiliates are not liable for any statements made or any harm claimed. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, here's Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio on Bobo 103.1.
And welcome back, K-Man, to more Straight Talk here on Bobo 103.1 FM and simulcasting live over YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. 7 minutes past the hour of 6 o'clock is the time in studios with your host, Ellio Solomon, and myself, Austin Harris, as we move into our final half hour, which really, about final 23 minutes before we have to wrap it up for today yet again. The phone lines are open. 745-2626 is the number if you want to pick up on any of the topics we have discussed so far, which, again, in basic quick summary, they include from the beginning, obviously, the search continues for missing Compass Media journalist Andrell Harris. If you have seen Mr. Harris since Tuesday, those persons are encouraged to reach out to the Royal Cayman Police Service. Also, in the court, CUC argues in court against the cost and renewable energy studies being released in the public domain. This reflects, of course, an ongoing battle between the Ombudsman's Office and the utility regulator, OFREG, in releasing what CUC defines as commercially sensitive information in the public domain. And, of course, sticking with the Ombudsman, but going back to a media report that was in the headlines a few weeks ago, but we never had the opportunity to discuss it. The Ombudsman's Office is also engaged in an own investigation, taking a look into the police services detention center on Fairbanks Road amid fears over safety and drug abuse. In that discussion, obviously, we talked about the two previous reports, one being done in 2014 by the Human Rights Commission, which we can't say one way or the other whether a formal report was actually ever published, or a 2013 report published by the National Drug Council, which was published on the 12th of September 2013, which examined policies and heard testimonies from individuals housed at His Majesty's Prison Northward, His Majesty's Prison Fairbanks, and Eagle House at the time, 2013. So those are the topics we have been discussing, and we do have, Ellio, at least two comments emanating from the social media line, 928-2562, as it relates to them. Plus, well, actually, the one comment was relevant to the other discussion topic that you spoke of. Again, a call to arms, if you will, encouraging members of the public to help us formulate a think tank, but also on your overarching point that, I guess, observation that it's only the vocal minority who perhaps engage in the day-to-day conversation of issues that we talk about on this talk show or others, but the intellectuals rarely will participate, but more so sit back and listen. One writer says, normally people don't engage because the consultation and complaint process are so complex and to the average person, one might argue, extremely boring as well, is one listener's viewpoint. And
I take it that's on the lodging of sort of grievances via the law.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And then the other one just takes us back to the CUC matter that is now presently making its way through the courts. It reads, since CUC is a publicly traded company, shouldn't these reports not be in the public domain as a matter of principle? Yet CUC says that they are what's best for the Cayman people. But on the other hand, are they hiding reports that are of interest to the public? Well, certainly these are the questions that the Ombudsman believes, perhaps, or continues to argue and believes in the Ombudsman's view, that they should be in the public domain. Both OFREG and arguably CUC are taking the position that maybe not everything is fit for public consumption. We'll see what the court decides.
So the Ombudsman's office seems to be indicating that his or her questions are the correct ones.
No, absolutely. The Ombudsman takes on board the listeners' comments that, this information is in the public interest
Should be public,
therefore, it should be available in full to the public. So we hope the Ombudsman wins because clearly this is information that we all can, in fact, use. Ellio, 11 minutes.
Yeah, well, I just want to say, first of all, again, thank all of our callers, our persons who made their contributions. The other day, we had our good friend, Mr. Mario Ebanks, who called in. Yep. And amongst other things, he talked about the vaping. Now, I want him, and of course, the marijuana edibles, the edible stuff. I'm not sure where my friend is hanging out, but I think he said, I think he said it was a particular show. I'm just teasing you, Mario. But on the vaping, I did start to just do a little bit of investigation. I think you might have touched on it as well. So I'm definitely far away from being finished. But one of the things that becomes very interesting is to note that there seems to be quite a bit of prevalence of the THC oil in Cayman in terms of people actually smoking it already.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I'd like to stress, it's still illegal. Now, a question that I have is, does the customs, for example, actually have the equipment necessary to go ahead and test and to be able to make their distinction between the various oils? I mean, it's not something you're going to get by smelling it,
no,
or licking it. You actually need to have the. I guess you would probably use those sort of sticks, the bio sticks. I guess you stick in there and it changes the color depending if CBD or THC is present.
What would happen to some either customs or certainly the Royal Cayman Police law enforcement would have?
Well, considering that a lot of things would probably be coming through customs, particularly, I mean, I would imagine either way, you want to know that, and I just so far I've been unable to ascertain it, but hopefully we are in a position where we have those bio sticks and we can do some testing. But it is a bit of a somewhat concerning situation that somebody can be walking through the airport with a vape right in their hands, and you don't know whether that is even outside of vaping and the harm of vaping, whether it's of actual legal substance or not that they're actually vaping. So it's definitely something that we want to look into. And I know I'll just throw it as a side because I think it is interesting from the U.S. perspective, and I think you touched on it during one of the breaks, that I see that our good friends, Donald Trump and Mr. Elon Musk, seems to be having a bit of a divorce at this point in time.
It's the best buddies relationship is coming to an abrupt end.
It reminds me of ghetto style, when you used to watch the girls fight, everybody just pulled the chair up and listen and say, the gossip's going to come out now.
Boy Musk did come across a bit of a cheerleader for Trump there for a while.
But but it is very sad, right? At least from my perspective. Hopefully they'll hug and kiss and make up or something.
Hopefully they'll renew their friendship.
But I see
It's always a little strange, but anyway.
I see that Elon Musk, according to this, did some kind of a tweet saying time to drop the really big bomb at real Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. That is the real reason they have not been made public. Have a nice day, DJT.
Wow.
It's like
taking the gloves off here.
Oh my God.
He won't be invited back to Mar-a-Lago.
No, I don't think after those sort of comments, I'm not sure there's any reparations in place.
No, not at all.
But either way, I know, it is unfortunate. Of course, one would question, well, if they wasn't having this sort of a divorce argument, would you have got those comments in the first place, right? Would you have heard that fact or allegation?
No, not at all. And I think what really started this whole thing going between Musk and Trump, on the one hand, Musk was a little peeved that, and again, I don't know the details, but a specific contract or government subsidy went to one of his competitors instead of his own company. This would have been a decision by Congress and not necessarily a decision by the White House. But clearly he believes, like Trump has always suggested that the real power really is in the White House and really not in the hands of Congress. So on the one hand, I think that was part of the reason. But on the other hand, what he has been vocal in the public domain about relates to the conflict that exists between, obviously, the president's comments about unnecessary government and bureaucratic spending when he supported the formation of the group DOGE, Department of Government Spending. I think it is a government expenditure, in which Elon Musk was leading at the time. Both of them felt, and they made public utterances to suggest how things like GIS aid are distributed to
USAID and so on,
to persons not deserving. They went on to point out on the human resources side, there are persons that receive paychecks that don't turn up to work, and which, of course, Mr. Musk and Mr. Trump stated, you want to get paid, show up to work. You stay home, you're going to get fired.
Well, you heard about that one where there were individuals, like 147-year-olds, receiving social service,
people
social security checks.
Clearly in cemeteries, still receiving social security. So, I mean, it was harkened back to Donald Trump's first term in the administration, where he used phrases such as he's going to drain the swamp. Obviously, Trump is not a politician. He doesn't have a political background. But he came at this thing, almost like a tidal wave, because voters wanted that. They wanted a break from, the normal, typical political practices, which arguably were sins committed by both Democrats and Republicans. But Trump was billing himself as different. And certainly, whilst his first term was, we'll talk about a merry-go-round, his second term certainly seemed to continue along that same pathway. So here are Trump and Musk, stuck together in agreement that they are going to reduce and remove some of the bureaucratic spending on the road towards making America great again. And then Musk saw the recent budget put out by Congress and said, hang on, this is a complete about-face. You're going right back down the roadway of approving unnecessary spending, which just a few short months ago we both agreed was part of the problem. And he's made some rather personal comments as it relates to the budget, which arguably Trump can say he didn't approve. It was approved by Congress, but the Congress is his party, and he is president. And as Trump constantly reminds everybody, no decision is made in America unless it comes across his desk. And that is where Musk said enough is enough. If you want to go down this road, you do it by yourself. So, and of course I'm paraphrasing because it is like an ongoing novella or, daytime drama. Tune in today to see whether or not Musk leaves or does he throw the champagne bottle in the direction of the Trump whilst being tackled by Secret Service. Today on As the White House Turns.
Well, I mean, I imagine, again, not to get too much into the American politics, but I imagine it's a bit of a plus and negative, because at the same time there was a big blessing of having Elon there with Donald Trump and his support. I think that gave him a lot of support, financial, etc. But at the same time, it was a bit of a noose around his neck at the same time politically. People's throwing and sort of saying, you've got the big money in the house now and they're controlling the politics. So positives and negatives, my friend, that's all I can say. But either way, want my colleague to know, and I've got a couple of different things that even from this program I think that we should look into in terms of discussions. And I just wanted my good learned friend to know that insofar as the vaping and stuff, we're on it, we're looking at it, and we will continue to do so. So stay tuned for it.
Absolutely. And, speaking of vaping, I mean, vaping was, when it was first introduced, as promoted as a safer alternative to smoking tobacco-based products, cigarettes or otherwise. But the serious health concerns continue to come in as the myths, arguably, associated with vaping are starting to be disproven. There have been health concerns, including lung damage, addiction, as well as potential long-term health effects, supposedly coming from a substance that many have argued, well, it's only water vapor, doesn't contain anywhere near the carcinogens that tobacco-based products were. That is proving to be clearly not the case. Nicotine, this is a key component of the vape products, is highly addictive, and whether you smoke it in cigarettes or vape form doesn't necessarily change the harmful impacts.
And I heard in many instances, you're getting even higher percentages.
Yes, no, absolutely. And one of the things people said about it was that unlike cigarettes, for example, you have one individual cigarette, there comes a point when that ends.
It ends, yeah.
You know it's over, you put it down, and then you don't smoke again.
Yeah.
With a vape, it never ends. So theoretically, a person can change
well, at least you can probably smoke 20 worth.
You can
without
smoke
nonstop.
a pack of cigarettes in a single sitting, and that, of course, is what's expediting the damage to the lungs, many people are saying, as they study this phenomenon.
Well, just to interject, and I apologize, but, it's one of the things that continues to amaze me. It's like, do you really need a study to tell you that you shouldn't be breathing anything other than some good fresh air? I mean, do you really need a study to tell you that? Like, it's not normal,
Indeed.
Regardless of how good it might smell, I think it should be obvious that this is not good for your health. But either way, we continue.
And again, something that when it was first introduced was promoted as perhaps an end to traditional smoking. Maybe perhaps, again, removing the stigma with cigarette smoking, removing the smell and the harmful secondhand smoke of smokers. Maybe even arguably reducing smokers away from the traditional cigarette to vaping. Well, none of that has happened, and perhaps even more so, or perhaps even more troubling, according to the Harvard Medical School recent, not recent, it was 2023, it was published, but a survey conducted both in 2022 and before that in 2017, as it relates to another concerning factor, is that the prevalence of vaping continues, but what is concerning is the prevalence of vaping among teenagers, persons below the age of 18. According to a survey conducted by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention cited in the Harvard Health Publishing Journal, the rate of high school students reported using e-cigarettes in 2022 grew to 14.1% as compared to 11.7% in 2017. Also among the survey, among high school seniors, found that more than 40% had tried e-cigarettes, which of course are illegal to sell to anyone under 21 in most states, but also either 18 or 19 in other states. But despite these law preventions, it is not doing really anything from preventing teenagers, high school students, and maybe even those younger from gaining access to these vapes. This is a phenomenon we see here in Cayman as well.
And I think with parents, a lot of times it has to go completely under the radar, right? So you're a parent, you don't want your kid smoking, but your teenager's coming home from school, but you just smell something nice on them. It smells like somebody, like a musky kind of little perfume or something. So you're not paying attention to that.
Well, and again, it started with this phenomenon about who can blow the biggest cloud.
That was the other one, like the circles and...
Exactly. Not even just the circles, but it would just become where... I don't know how it works. I tried the vape for about a week, and I found it made me cough more than the other traditional cigarette, so I just went back to the danger I knew. But folks...
The admission.
Hey, listen, I come clean. I wish I never started smoking, but it is something I didn't do.
I got one family member who says, Ellio, it's not smoking. Smoking requires burning. I'm like, I don't care what you call it, buddy. You're smoking.
Yeah, indeed. Also from the Harvard Medical Journal, it talks about addressing the myth that somehow e-cigarettes or vaping are less dangerous than the traditional tobacco cigarettes. They point out that not only is nicotine contained in these vapes, but there's artificial flavoring, which have chemicals contained in it that have linked to serious lung disease. There are volatile organic compounds, cancer-causing chemicals, as well as heavy metals, such as nickel, tin, and lead contained in the ingredients in this otherwise vape liquid.
We all need our daily dose of that, don't we?
So it's not just nicotine and or CBD, but a bit of other things that perhaps may make up the mystery sauce that our young people and not so young people are doing. One of the things that are growing in great commonality right now is something called popcorn lung, brought on specifically by vaping, which of course causes the bronchitis type of illness, shortness of breath, inflammation, wheezing, and coughing, and in some extreme cases, even death associated to this popcorn lung, and of course the ongoing risks of vaping. So these are all issues that are relevant to the rest of the world, and they're relevant in this part of the world. We see it happening here in Cayman, and arguably some of the prevention tools that have been intended to prevent young people from accessing these otherwise dangerous substances arguably are simply having no effect whatsoever, because young people are still finding access to it. When we look at the National Drug Council survey, particularly as it relates to alcohol, we also learned that young people, perhaps even as young as 7 years old in the Cayman Islands in particular, are having their first drink. And where are they getting this drink? Well, their mom and father's liquor cabinet at home.
Right.
You know, so whereas in the States, you know, the concern is, because in the States, you know, on the right to bear arms, everybody has a gun. And so the requirement is, you know, make sure you lock up these guns and put it in a gun safe. In Cayman, we might want to consider our version of a gun safe, saying, maybe we should lock up that family bar if you got young kids around who might otherwise be exploring, because let's face it.
Yeah, put a safety one that way.
We were all young at one time, and we all perhaps may be guilty of committing the sin of curiosity. In some cases, these sins of curiosity can, in fact, kill us or lead to dangerous health effects later down the road. So we're not unique, and certain we're not special.
So I'm getting actually on the vaping test thing that I talked about. Someone texted and said, let me see, everything is sent to the hospital lab for official testing.
Really?
Well, that sounds like a bit of a delay, doesn't it?
It certainly does.
I mean, I would think that our customs and the police, whatever it is, they should have these little bio strips. I don't know if I have the correct nomenclature, right wording, but I would think some little bio strips that you could dip in there and just basically tell you
Johnny
if CBD or THC is present, you know, something like that.
I would think so. I would hope so as well. I really would. I would be very, very surprised if, to the writer's point, not, you know, obviously saying the writer's lying, but I'd be very surprised that all drugs taken off the streets have to go to the hospital to be verified, because let's just say there's a lot to surprise me. River between wherever you picked it up and you got to get to the hospital. Things fall off a truck all the time, you know. We caught you with 10 kilos. By the time we get to the hospital, here are 2 kilos that we found on the street. Can you examine it? Where'd the other 8 go? I don't know. We hit a pothole. They jumped out and voila, it's gone. Well, we'll track it down next week. Don't worry.
I like the voice changes.
So the police say we're taking the Al Capone approach towards crime. We'll talk to you about tomorrow, by the way, what that means from a police perspective. Believe me, you can't make this stuff up. But at 29 minutes past the hour of 6 o'clock, that's all the time we have remaining. Ellio, as always, thank you for being with us.
Yeah, and all I want to say, if you see anything floating, you know, just leave it there.
Yeah, referring to those square groupers that sometimes wash up on the shoreline.
The square compressed
groupers. Indeed. That's all the time we have for you tonight, but tune in again tomorrow as we wrap up another week here on Straight Talk on Bobo FM.
The home of the BBC World Service, the most trusted news source in the world. This is Bobo 103.1. The following commercial messages are brought to you exclusively by Stingray Media. This is Bobo 103.1. Now in our new home of 103.1 FM. Powered by Health Services Authority. Committed to caring for you. Now, let's rejoin the BBC World Service.
Filming and streaming participants live to the world 24 hours a day and making it all into a competition with one winner left at the end.
It was more than just a hit.